Welcome back to Law&Crime Daily, everybody. We have a big update for you in the death of a Florida Microsoft executive targeted in a hit last year. His ex-wife is now facing charges. So we want to lay out all the players that are involved in this. So Jared Bridegan was married to Shanna Gardner, but the two divorced. Shanna married Gardner-Fernandez, and investigators say that Fernandez plotted with a man named Henry Tenon to kill Bridegan. Tenon was a tenant at one of Fernandez's rental properties, and when he was arrested, he admitted what he'd done and told police that he would cooperate with them. Police say Jared Bridegan had just dropped off his twins at Shanna's home in Jacksonville Beach, Florida, and he was headed back to his own place with his 2-year-old from his second marriage in the car when he came across a tire in the road. When he got out to move it, police say Tenon shot him. Shanna moved across the country to Washington after the murder, distancing herself from her new husband. But Thursday morning, a grand jury handed down an indictment against her. Prosecutors also made a stunning announcement about punishment they're seeking.
This morning, a Fourth Circuit grand jury indicted Shanna Gardner for first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, solicitation to commit first-degree murder, and child abuse, all related to the murder of Jared Bridegan, Shanna's ex-husband. Gardner was arrested shortly after and taken into custody by ATF Washington Field Division agents in West Richland, Washington. Gardner will be extradited to Duval County to face these charges. We will be filing a notice of our intent to seek the death penalty, as we have also done in the case of Mario Fernandez.
Okay, so the prosecution's now seeking the death penalty against Gardner and Fernandez. Good idea to go after that penalty for both of them?
I think so. I would do either both of them or neither of them, because in my opinion, if she is the one who said, look, I want to kill my ex-husband, and she engaged her current husband to do that, they're both responsible. They're both plotting against him. And so I do think if you think that this is a death penalty case, as a prosecutor, I would do it against both of them. Now, I think the person who actually pulled the trigger, Tenon, because he actually admitted to it and he pulled the trigger and he went to the police, I wouldn't put the death penalty against him, and there's no evidence that they are doing that.
Well, he's cooperating.
Correct.
Right.
Exactly. So, but I do think that they should seek it against both of them.
Here's the thing I don't get. They were a bit tight-lipped on what new information they gained that ultimately led to this grand jury indictment. The fact that they're going with a death penalty, does that tell us something, Brian? Does that give us some clues as to what may have happened here?
I think it does. I think whatever they found in terms of presenting to the grand jury is going to be jaw-dropping, because if Tenon is the trigger man, why seek the death penalty for these two who did the planning and not the actual trigger man? We've seen it the other way around in other cases. Think of Y&W Melly, why they're seeking the death penalty for him and not Y&W Melly Bortland. So I think the planning of the murders and what probably went into getting Bridegan to the location where the murder happened, I think might be so heinous. That's why they're seeking the death penalty there. I'm looking at forensics, text messages, coordination between the two of them. I think that's going to be jaw-dropping in this case.
So I know we've seen cases before where the killer themselves, the jury comes back and sentences somebody to, or recommends the sentence of death. For someone who planned it and didn't pull the trigger or actually stab someone or strangle someone, do we typically see a jury voting in favor of the death penalty for the planner?
Well, not usually, but here I think, had it not been for the wife, had it not been for the current husband, this would not have happened. And oftentimes I say, why not go after the people who planned it? Why not have the death penalty against them? The person who pulled the trigger in this case was just someone who happened to be living in the complex, someone who may have had a gun, someone who may have, been involved in crimes before. He was just someone, that they were using essentially.
And it sounds to me the fact that the child was in the car was an aggravating factor that they can't escape.
Not just aggravating, it's another charge. That's the child abuse charge there.
Good point. That is the child, but I think that adds an extra layer to it as well. Coming up on Law&Crime Daily, Amazon dominates many retail spaces, and members of the publishing world have had it. A new letter asking for an FTC probe and the FTC's own efforts to loosen the company's iron grip. Plus, May mark the 1-year anniversary of a deadly racially motivated mass shooting out in New York, who the victims and their families are now choosing to target in 2 brand new lawsuits. Welcome back, everybody. It has been a little over a year since a racially motivated mass shooting in Buffalo, New York, And this week, 2 new lawsuits are being filed to try to hold those who helped the shooter accountable. On May 14th, 2022, a gunman entered Tops Friendly Market with an AR-15, killing 10 people, wounding 3 others, and leaving a community traumatized. The shooting took place in a predominantly black neighborhood, and all those who were killed were black. It was revealed that the gunman was a self-proclaimed white supremacist, and the attack was considered a hate crime. In February of this year, the shooter was sentenced to 11 consecutive life sentences for murder, domestic terrorism, and hate crimes charges. He also faces additional hate crimes charges in federal court. Wednesday, it was announced that 2 new lawsuits are being filed against a number of parties believed to be responsible for the supermarket attack. The plaintiffs include the son of Celestine Chaney, who was killed in the shooting, and 16 survivors that continue to suffer severe emotional distress. Listed defendants include companies that manufactured and sold the rifle, magazine lock, and body armor to the gunman. Also included are social media platforms, YouTube and Reddit, which allegedly helped radicalize the shooter and help him learn all about weapons. The suits also target the gunman's parents, claiming they ignored clear warning signs of an imminent threat. The plaintiffs seek an undisclosed amount of punitive and compensatory damages. So what do you think, Terry? Do you think this is a good lawsuit? Do you think there's something here about holding the people that made the gun and distributed it?
Absolutely. I think they are in New York, and that's a good thing as far as this lawsuit is concerned, because New York has stricter laws than you might see under federal law. So for the gun manufacturers under federal law, they are exempt unless there is some sort of entrustment, some negligent entrustment. They're exempt from any liability as far as the manufacturing is concerned. And so in New York, you can sue the manufacturer because if it's a public nuisance, you can sue. So they're in New York. Same thing with the social media. They're in New York. Social media companies are responsible in New York. They have to have policies to prevent these sort of hate crimes. Under New York law, they really do have a good chance of prevailing in this. Under federal law, it's not the same. Under Section 230,
Right.
I know we're getting into detail, but under that section, social media companies are exempt unless there are very special circumstances from liability for these types of cases.
Brian, what do you think? This is not the first time somebody has filed this kind of lawsuit before.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of them failed, but to Terry's point, both New York and California are creating new laws to try to push back on that. But I think not only is opening the door to make it available for them to make these types of lawsuits a thing, the finger pointing that's going to happen is going to be ridiculous, because I can already see the people who do the body armor are going to say, I didn't make a product that killed anyone. My product literally protects people, so go after the gun people. The gun people want to say, hey, a gun laying there on a table doesn't harm anyone. Go after the social media who's putting these ideas out there. And the social media platforms are going to be like, I didn't put a gun in anyone's hands. It's going to be like the Spider-Man meme of them all pointing at each other. And I think not only the finger pointing, but also the law itself, the issue of causation. I'm YouTube. I have good videos, I have bad videos. Just because this person decided to focus on the bad videos, I can't be held liable for that. It's going to be a lot of moving parts here.
It filed on the 1-year anniversary. That's pretty symbolic, no?
Yeah, it is symbolic. I think they want to make a point here, and I think I'm glad that they're bringing it. And one thing I have to say as far as what Ryan's concerned, point fingers if you want. There's plenty of blame to go around. And I think that you're seeing states like New York and California enforcing these sort of new laws so that we can finally maybe do something as far as these mass shootings are concerned.
All right, well, we'll continue to follow this one. When we come back, Amazon finds themselves in the hot seat, or maybe more than one. Why they're being accused of monopolizing the book industry, and a move by the FTC that could disband them for good. And we are finishing today's show with a letter written to the Department of Justice about tech giant Amazon. U.S. booksellers and authors want the online retailer investigated over their alleged chokehold on the bookselling industry. The author and bookseller associations are demanding a probe by the Federal Trade Commission on Amazon's, quote, continued use of unfair methods of competition. Amazon initially started out as an online bookstore in 1994, and according to the letter, they now account for 50 to 90% of all physical and e-book sales in the retail and online space. The groups accuse Amazon of using, quote, strong-arm tactics to force traditional publishers to sign oppressive contracts that let Amazon to market the products in ways that best benefit the company. Now, behind the scenes, it's reported that Amazon is scheduled to have one last meeting with the FTC before the agency launches a massive antitrust lawsuit that could disband the company for good. Now, the majority of the FTC's lawsuit allegedly tackles logistics monopoly claims, so it's unclear if book sales in particular are included in that conversation. Terry, this is pretty big. I mean, Amazon here, what is your take on it?
Well, first of all, Amazon is very convenient. I think a lot of people would be very upset if Amazon somehow was disbanded. But you can have a dominance in the market without being a monopoly, without violating antitrust laws. To violate antitrust laws, what you have to do is things like price fixing, that you are unfairly competing. Here, if Amazon can show, look, we're just good. We just make sure we get our products out and we, distribute them well, and we're doing it on time. Just because they're good and they have a large piece of the market doesn't mean that they're violating the law.
So you are a published author, Brian. I don't know if you have a bias in this case, but what's your take on it? The authors what's their argument?
Yeah, so the argument being that this is a monopoly. They don't have the ability to push these sales of their books or the prices the way they want. And I don't think I've seen anything with my own book come home safe, but I have talked to my publishers on some days I see the book going for full price, and other days I see it going for half off, and then 25, and then it's like these weird sales that go on. And I do ask questions, and they say, well, it's just the algorithm that Amazon uses to help promote their books. I'm like, all right, so how is it helping my book? For me, I think it's a lot of just the mystery of not knowing and not fully understanding. And I think that's where the question becomes, if there were smoke, is there fire? Now, Amazon, I like having my book there. Please do not pull it based on this. I'm just saying that I understand the arguments and the smoke and mirrors of like people asking questions and saying, hey, FTC, can you look into this because we've got some questions?
Yeah, Brian's book is now available at Borders. It's gone. But let me ask you, Amazon's not going to get disbanded over this, right?
No, I mean, at most they might have to change some of their practices, but I don't think that anyone, at least based on what I've seen, is going to be able to show that they intentionally, you'll have to have emails, you'll have to have documentation that they said, look, I know that Borders is in this market, let's go after them, let's undercut their prices. Exactly. If you have evidence like that, then in fact you can prevail.
Topic for another day. Terry, Brian, thank you. Everyone, thanks for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We're going to see you next time as we discuss justice in America.